Welcome to the second part of our series talking about the basics that you need to know to start playing Warhammer 40k. During our last video, we covered the foundations of how to pick an army, and today we're going to go a little bit more in depth about the forces of the Imperium, though we will be skipping over the various chapters of Loyalist Space Marines today, as they're going to be getting their own dedicated video later on. Our goal with this series is to break down an army into a few key components: their general vibe, a brief summary of their lore, and a surface level look of their playstyle on the tabletop. So with that said, let's go ahead and get started with our army breakdown. The Adepta Sororitas, also known as the Sisters of Battle, are some of the Emperor's most devout followers. A lot of people playfully refer to them as nuns with guns, and that isn't too far from the truth. As a part of the Imperium's religious arm, they certainly wear that religious influence on their pauldrons. Best examples being one of their tanks called the Immolator, which has a full-on stained glass window as a part of its design. While they, along with most armies, can be built to skew into one playstyle or another, the Sisters are mostly a short-ranged shooting and melee-focused army that places more emphasis on securing and scoring objectives compared to outright wiping your opponents off the board. They also have a special army rule called Acts of Faith that allow them to resource called Miracle Dice to help skew important moments in their favor instead of leaving it up to the dice gods. So if you like the idea of fighting against the enemies of the Emperor with fire, faith, and fury, then the Sisters of Battle might be for you. And moving on to the Custodes, the men and women of the Adeptus Custodes are the primary protectors of the Imperial Palace as well as the Golden Throne. There are rumors that the Emperor of Mankind personally created the Custodes, and they are widely regarded as the greatest warriors in the galaxy. These super soldiers are bigger, faster, and stronger than Space Marines, and while they used to rarely leave the Imperial Palace, the growing threats in the galaxy have led the Custodes and their allies, the Sisters of Silence, to take on a more active role in defending the Imperium. First and foremost, the Custodes are an elite army. Unless you're playing against something like Imperial or Chaos Knights, you're going to almost always be outnumbered on the table, but the Custodes make up for it in terms of durability, damage, and flexibility. Their army rule allows them to pick different stances called martial katas when they fight that provide bonuses to their melee profile depending on what you feel is most useful in that moment. While the Sisters are a bit more of a mixed arms force, the Custodes are primarily a melee-focused army. Switching gears, based on Mars, the engineers, scientists, and tech priests that make up the Adeptus Mechanicus are the keepers of knowledge used to create and maintain the Imperium's war machines. They're an incredibly superstitious group who worship a deity they call the Omnissiah instead of following the Imperial Creed. Playstyle-wise, AdMech is a little bit weird. They tend to play a little more horde-like, with an emphasis on the Scutari, automata, servitors, and other war machines. Their army rule allows them to select one of two imperatives at the start of the round that grant special buffs to their units. They can lean into both shooting and melee-heavy playstyles, but tend to be at their best as a mixed arms force. Shifting gears again, the billions of men and women of the Astra Militarum make up the everyday troops of the Imperium and its primary military force. These brave soldiers stand on the front lines in the face of Xenos invasions and chaos uprisings, and are the source of many of the Imperium's greatest stories, such as the defense of Cadia and the unwavering loyalty of the Death Corps of Krieg. If you're playing Imperial Guard, you're going to lean into an extremely gunline-heavy playstyle. Guard are known for their tanks, artillery, and a tendency to play pretty horde-like, with more guardsmen on the board than most armies can reasonably expect to clear over the course of a 5-round game. Your army rule, Voice of Command, allows your officers to issue commands to friendly units that provide you a variety of buffs depending on what you choose. Let's go to a group that's a little bit more secretive. The Grey Knights are an elite and secretive order of Space Marines who were created by the Emperor specifically to protect humanity from demonic threats and anyone who'd want to wield the powers of chaos. While their existence is kept secret from the Imperium at large, they work closely with the Ordo Malleus branch of the Inquisition and are all extremely powerful psychers. The Grey Knights are another melee-focused army that offers some short-ranged fire support. Their army rule, Teleport Assault, allows you to pick up units at the end of your opponent's turn and redeploy them during your next turn. Movement shenanigans are really strong in 40k, and they can enable you the ability to reposition and adjust your battle plan with more ease than someone without these abilities. The men and women of the Inquisition tend to work in secrecy as well, protecting the Imperium from threats of all kinds. Inquisitors are some of the highest-ranking members of the Inquisition and are given immense power and authority, with few who draw the ire of an Inquisitor living to tell the tale. The Inquisition is mainly defined by 3 major orders: the Ordo Xenos, the Ordo Hereticus, and the Ordo Malleus. The Imperial Agents are a very, very flavorful army and really encourage a skewed and thematic list building style depending on which detachment you use. As a result, it's honestly hard to kind of associate them with the main playstyle. They're often very character-heavy list and will ally in units from the Death Watch, Grey Knights, or Sisters of Battle, depending on which branch of the Inquisition you're playing with via your detachment choice. And finally, let's bring in some big monsters. Colossal war machines, towering over allies and foes alike, the Imperial Knights march to war under the banners of their knightly households as well as the Imperium. The pilots of Imperial Knights are descended from long-standing noble houses and have successfully undergone the rite of becoming to forge a bond with their knight and the machine spirit that inhabits it. Along with their Chaos Knight counterparts, Imperial Knights are one of the most elite armies in the game. Expect to field anywhere from around 4 to 12 models for your army, depending on how much you want to mix and match your larger knights with the smaller armigers. While you can skew knights into a more melee or shooting focused list, it honestly isn't recommended, as you're going to have so few models on the board compared to your opponents that a balance of ranged and melee options is going to allow you the ability to best answer the variety of threats you may need to deal with. Imperial Knights have no lack of heavy weapons, and they can easily take down enemy monsters and vehicles while also cutting through infantry with ease. Their main army rule, Code Chivalric, tasks you with selecting an oath to complete during the battle. If you succeed, your army will be granted a collection of buffs depending on which oath you selected. Overall, Knights are immensely powerful, but require playing with good positioning and target selection to really leverage their strengths. And as a final note, Knights are also allowed to be taken as allies into any Imperial army due to their Free Blades rule. So if you want to do this, you'll be allowed to take up to 1 large knight or up to 3 armigers in a standard 2,000 point game. With that said, that wraps up the second part in our Intro to 40k series, so let us know in the comments if any of these armies seem interesting to you, or if you want us to talk more in depth about a certain faction. And keep an eye out for our next video, as we're going to be looking at the Forces of Chaos.